Ronald Wilson Reagan was born on February 6, 1911, in a second-floor apartment in Tampico, Illinois, a small town that epitomized the spirit of the American Midwest. The child of Jack, a beleaguered Irish Catholic shoe salesman, and Nell, a devout Protestant of Scottish-English descent, Ronald's upbringing was marked by financial instability, but rich in the warmth of family and community ties. His father, whom he affectionately called Jack, struggled with alcoholism, which affected the family's financial stability. Despite this, Reagan often spoke fondly of Jack's storytelling prowess and optimistic nature, traits he inherited and later channeled into his own public persona.
Nell Reagan's influence on Ronald was profound. She was a beacon of faith and compassion, always reaching out to those in need within their church and community. Her belief in the power of optimism and her commitment to social justice left a lasting impression on young Ronald. Nell's teachings of self-reliance and community responsibility would later echo in Reagan's political rhetoric.
The Reagan family moved frequently as Jack sought employment. These relocations brought new challenges, but also instilled in Ronald a resilience and adaptability that would serve him well in his future endeavors. Despite the hardships, Ronald's childhood was filled with the simple pleasures of Midwestern life, playing in the fields, swimming in the Rock River, and developing a deep appreciation for storytelling and communication.
Reagan's formative years coincided with the Great Depression, a period of economic turmoil that deeply affected his worldview. Witnessing firsthand the struggles of his family and neighbors, Reagan developed an enduring belief in the American spirit, the idea that individuals could overcome adversity through hard work and determination. This belief became a cornerstone of his later political ideology.
In high school, Ronald excelled in sports and academics, displaying the charm and leadership qualities that would later define his public life. His talent for storytelling was evident in school plays, where he discovered a passion for performance that would eventually guide him to the bright lights of Hollywood. While Ronald's early years were marked by trials and transient stability, they also laid the groundwork for a worldview centered on optimism, perseverance, and the belief in the fundamental goodness of the American populace. These experiences in the heartland of America were vital in shaping the character and convictions of Ronald Reagan, setting him on the path to becoming one of the most influential figures in modern history.
Chapter 2. From Eureka College to Hollywood Stardom.
Ronald Reagan's journey continued at Eureka College in Illinois, a small liberal arts institution where he enrolled in 1928. It was here that Reagan's leadership abilities began to shine. Despite the financial strain his education placed on the family, Ronald made the most of his college experience, diving into extracurricular activities and academics with a vigor that foreshadowed his future achievements. At Eureka, Reagan majored in economics and sociology, a dual focus that reflected his growing interest in societal structures and individual empowerment. His tenure was marked by active participation in the college's drama club, where he honed his oratory skills and developed a love for performance, a passion that would serve as a vehicle for his eventual entry into the world of cinema.
Reagan's natural charisma and leadership capabilities were evident during his time at Eureka. He was elected student body president and was known for his ability to inspire and unite his fellow students. In response to proposed cuts to faculty and student programs during the Great Depression, Ronald led a student strike, demonstrating the courage and conviction that would later define his political career.
Graduating in 1932 during the depths of the Depression, Reagan faced a daunting job market. He became a radio announcer in Iowa, where his deep, reassuring voice and flair for storytelling quickly garnered attention. Known as Dutch Regan, due to a childhood nickname, he became a popular sports announcer and gained a following for his vivid play-by-play accounts of Chicago Cubs baseball games.
Reagan's breakthrough into film came in 1937 after a successful screen test with Warner Bros. He leveraged his Hollywood connections, made during a chance trip to California, to secure a contract with the studio. Over the next 2 decades, he appeared in more than 50 films, establishing himself as a reliable leading man. Though never quite reaching the status of a superstar, Reagan's career was steady, with notable roles in movies such as Newt Rockne, All-American, where he famously portrayed the legendary Notre Dame football player George Gipp, a role that would earn him the enduring nickname, the Gipper.
His time in Hollywood was not only transformative professionally, but also personally. Reagan's first marriage to actress Jane Wyman ended in divorce in 1949, a personal setback that challenged his optimism but ultimately strengthened his resolve. He found lasting love with actress Nancy Davis, whom he married in 1952. Nancy would become his greatest supporter and an influential confidant throughout his career.
During the peak of his acting career, Reagan became deeply involved with the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, serving as its president multiple times. His leadership during the tumultuous period of the Red Scare and his battle against communism in Hollywood laid the groundwork for his eventual politicization. These experiences deepened his understanding of politics and governance, setting the stage for his future in the public arena.
Chapter 3: The Political Awakening.
The 1950s and 1960s marked a period of significant transformation for Ronald Reagan, as his experiences in Hollywood and his marriage to Nancy led to an evolution in his political beliefs. Initially a Democrat, Reagan's political views began to shift, influenced by his growing disillusionment with government bureaucracy and the influence of communism.
As president of the Screen Actors Guild, Reagan witnessed firsthand the impact of political ideologies on the entertainment industry. The Red Scare brought fear and suspicion to Hollywood, with accusations of communist ties ruining careers and lives. Reagan's stance against communism solidified during this period, aligning him with more conservative ideals. His resolve to protect individual freedoms and resist governmental overreach laid the foundation for his eventual transition to the Republican Party.
Despite his growing conservatism, Reagan remained a Democrat until 1962. The turning point came during the 1964 presidential campaign, when Reagan delivered a televised speech on behalf of Republican candidate Barry Goldwater. Entitled "A Time for Choosing," the speech was a fierce defense of free market principles and a denunciation of big government. Its eloquence and conviction resonated with millions, marking Reagan as a rising star in conservative circles and solidifying his shift to the Republican Party.
Reagan's focus on the power of the individual and minimal government interference were ideas rooted in his Midwestern upbringing. His belief that government was often the problem, not the solution, struck a chord with a nation grappling with social and economic changes. The speech not only catapulted him onto the national stage, but also laid the groundwork for his gubernatorial campaign in California.
In 1966, Reagan was elected governor of California, defeating incumbent Pat Brown. His tenure as governor saw a blend of progressive and conservative policies, reflecting the complexities of his political ideology. Reagan focused on welfare reform, tax cuts, and an emphasis on law and order. He navigated the turbulent waters of the 1960s, addressing the challenges posed by student protests, the growing environmental movement, and the evolving dynamics of civil rights.
Reagan's pragmatic approach to governance was evident in his ability to adapt and compromise. While maintaining his conservative framework, he implemented pragmatic solutions, such as signing into law the California Environmental Quality Act, which provided robust environmental protections. His governance style was characterized by a focus on efficiency and a belief in the capabilities of private enterprise, foreshadowing the policies he would later champion as president.
Throughout his 2 terms as governor, Reagan honed his communication skills, engaging with the public through media and direct appearances. His ability to convey complex policy ideas in accessible language and inspire confidence in his leadership resonated with Californian voters and beyond. By the end of his gubernatorial tenure, Reagan had firmly established himself as a national political figure, setting the stage for his next challenge, the presidency.
Chapter 4: The Road to the White House.
As Ronald Reagan's governorship drew to a close, his sights turned toward a new horizon, the presidency of the United States. Having cemented his status as a prominent figure within the Republican Party, Reagan was seen as a charismatic leader with an unwavering belief in American exceptionalism and a clear vision for the country's future.
Reagan initially sought the Republican presidential nomination in 1968 and 1976, Although unsuccessful in both attempts, these campaigns broadened his national appeal and solidified his reputation as a leading conservative voice. His perseverance reflected a deep-seated belief in his capacity to lead America through a period of economic and international challenges.
The late 1970s were a time of uncertainty in the United States, marked by economic struggles, rising inflation, and a seemingly weakened global standing. The country was gripped by an energy crisis, prolonged inflation, and the embarrassing fallout of the Iran hostage crisis. Amidst this backdrop of disillusionment and a perceived decline in American strength, Reagan's message of optimism and renewal struck a chord with a restless electorate.
Reagan declared his candidacy for the 1980 presidential election, positioning himself as a champion of conservative values and a catalyst for change. He campaigned on a platform centered around reducing taxes, curbing the growth of government, restoring American pride, and strengthening national defense. His ability to articulate these ideas clearly and persuasively earned him widespread support across a diverse constituency.
The 1980 presidential election was a pivotal moment in American history. Reagan faced incumbent Democratic President Jimmy Carter, who struggled with low approval ratings and an aura of malaise surrounding his administration. Utilizing his finely tuned communication skills, Reagan connected with the American public, portraying himself as a leader who could restore confidence and bring about meaningful change.
The turning point came during the presidential debates when Reagan delivered one of his most memorable lines. "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" This question encapsulated the public's growing dissatisfaction and reinforced Reagan's vision for a new beginning. The clarity of his message and his reassuring demeanor resonated deeply, leading to a sweeping victory with the electoral map overwhelmingly painted in red.
In January 1981, Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as the 40th President of the United States. His victory marked a significant realignment in American politics, signaling a shift toward conservative policies and a resurgence of national pride. Reagan's presidency would not only be defined by the issues he championed, but also by his ability to communicate them in a way that inspired Americans to believe in the promise of their nation's future once more.
Chapter 5: The Reagan Revolution.
Upon assuming the presidency in 1981, Ronald Reagan set out to implement a series of transformative policies that collectively became known as the Reagan Revolution. This era was marked by sweeping ideological changes that reshaped American politics, economy, and society, leaving an indelible mark on the nation's trajectory.
Central to Reagan's domestic agenda was the implementation of Reaganomics, a package of economic policies designed to stimulate growth and curb inflation. Anchored in supply-side economics, Reaganomics emphasized tax cuts, deregulation, and reduced government spending as tools for fostering economic expansion. The Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981, which slashed income tax rates across the board, exemplified Reagan's commitment to these principles.
The impact of Reaganomics was profound, yet it also sparked considerable debate. Supporters argued that the tax cuts spurred economic growth, reduced unemployment, and revitalized business investment. Critics contended that the policies disproportionately benefited the wealthy, exacerbated income inequality, and led to a significant increase in the national deficit.
Another key facet of Reagan's domestic policy was his focus on reducing the size and scope of government. He believed that excessive regulation stifled innovation and slowed economic progress. His administration actively pursued deregulation across various sectors, from finance to telecommunications, aiming to unleash market forces and stimulate competition.
Reagan's presidency also emphasized a renewed sense of American exceptionalism and patriotism. He sought to restore national pride and confidence, countering the perceived decline in American influence with a robust foreign policy and strong national defense. His administration invested heavily in the military, advocating for a strategic defense initiative and a formidable nuclear arsenal as deterrents against global threats.
On the international stage, Reagan's presidency was defined by his unwavering stance against the Soviet Union. He famously dubbed it the Evil Empire and adopted a policy of peace through strength, a strategy aimed at containing communism while simultaneously engaging in diplomatic negotiations. His administration's bold rhetoric and commitment to military strength played a crucial role in the eventual dissolution of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War.
Despite these achievements, Reagan's presidency was not without controversy. The Iran-Contra affair, a scandal involving the secret sale of arms to Iran and the diversion of funds to Nicaraguan Contra rebels, tarnished his administration's image. While Reagan himself claimed ignorance of the operation's details, the affair underscored the complexities and ethical dilemmas present in foreign policy decisions.
Throughout his presidency, Reagan's ability to communicate effectively with the American people remained one of his most potent tools. His speeches, infused with optimism and a sense of purpose, resonated with millions. Whether addressing economic challenges or international conflicts, Reagan's confident delivery and firm conviction inspired a renewed sense of hope and resilience.
As Reagan's presidency came to a close in January 1989, he left a complex legacy characterized by significant achievements and ongoing debates. While his policies shaped the landscape of American politics and economics for decades, their broader impacts continue to be the subject of scholarly examination and political discourse. Chapter 6: The Cold War and Foreign Policy. The Cold War was a predominant aspect of Ronald Reagan's presidency, defining much of his foreign policy agenda. Positioned as an unwavering adversary to the Soviet Union, Reagan's approach to international relations was marked by a combination of staunch anti-communism, sharp rhetoric, and strategic diplomacy.
Reagan's view of the Soviet Union as a malevolent force informed his administration's efforts to confront and contain communist expansion. His famous declaration of the Soviet Union as the evil empire framed the ideological struggle as a moral as well as geopolitical battle. This hardline stance was a departure from the détente policies of previous administrations and signaled a shift towards a more assertive American foreign policy. Central to Reagan's strategy was the concept of peace through strength. He significantly increased defense spending, launching initiatives such as the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, a proposed missile defense system intended to protect the United States from potential Soviet attacks. While SDI faced skepticism and was viewed by some as unrealistic, it represented Reagan's commitment to military superiority as a deterrent against Soviet aggression.
Reagan's arms buildup and his administration's hardline stance towards the USSR put pressure on the Soviet economy, which was already strained by internal inefficiencies and the costly arms race. Simultaneously, Reagan maintained diplomatic channels, recognizing the need for dialogue alongside deterrence. A defining moment in Reagan's presidency came with the Reykjavik summit in 1986, where he engaged in direct negotiations with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. Although the summit initially ended without a comprehensive arms control agreement, it laid the groundwork for future accords and signaled a thaw in superpower relations.
Reagan's willingness to engage diplomatically with Gorbachev culminated in the signing of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces (INF) Treaty in 1987. This landmark agreement eliminated an entire class of nuclear missiles from the arsenals of both superpowers, marking a significant step towards international disarmament and détente.
Beyond the Cold War, Reagan's foreign policy faced numerous challenges, including the complexities of Middle Eastern politics. The Lebanon conflict and the rise of terrorism presented difficult dilemmas for his administration. The bombing of the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut in 1983 highlighted the dangers of involvement in regional conflicts, leading to a re-evaluation of military engagement abroad.
Reagan's administration also faced criticism for its support of authoritarian regimes considered allies in the fight against communism. The United States' involvement in Latin America, particularly in Nicaragua and El Salvador, drew controversy and debate over human rights issues and the ethics of interventionism. Despite these challenges, Reagan's foreign policy successes contributed to a climatic shift in the global balance of power. His presidency witnessed the gradual easing of Cold War tensions and ultimately played a crucial role in the dissolution of the Soviet Union, a pivotal event that marked the end of an era defined by ideological confrontation.
Chapter 7: Reagan's Domestic Impact and Challenges. The domestic landscape of the United States during Reagan's presidency was characterized by significant economic reforms, social change, and ongoing debates over policy direction and governance.
Reagan's economic policies, collectively known as Reaganomics, sought to revitalize the American economy through tax reform and a reduction in government regulation. Advocating for supply-side economics, Reagan aimed to shift the economic burden away from the government and towards the private sector, championing innovation and entrepreneurship.
The cornerstone of his economic vision was the 1981 Economic Recovery Tax Act, which set in motion one of the largest tax cuts in U.S. history. Designed to stimulate investment, these tax reductions were coupled with a tightening of monetary policy to control inflation. The results of Reaganomics were mixed, producing both significant economic growth and controversial outcomes. Supporters credit these policies with reducing inflation, curbing unemployment, and fostering a decade-long economic expansion. Critics, however, highlight the growing inequality and rising national deficits as unintended consequences of reducing governmental revenues.
Reagan set out to reshape the social fabric of the nation, engaging in policy debates over welfare, education, and civil rights. His administration sought to restructure welfare programs, introducing measures intended to reduce dependency and encourage self-sufficiency. However, the cuts to social services faced criticism from those who argued that such measures disproportionately affected marginalized communities.
Education reform also featured prominently during Reagan's presidency. His administration advocated for increased state and local control, aiming to reduce federal involvement in public education. The publication of A Nation at Risk in 1983 highlighted the perceived decline in educational standards, prompting national discussions on the quality and accessibility of American education.
Amidst these reforms, Reagan's presidency was not without its challenges. The HIV/AIDS epidemic emerged as a critical public health issue during the 1980s, yet the administration's slow response drew accusations of neglect and insensitivity toward affected communities.
Civil rights also remained a contentious issue, as Reagan's administration faced criticism for its approach to affirmative action and voting rights. Questions about the efficacy and fairness of existing policies led to vigorous debates on race relations and the role of government in addressing inequality.
Despite these challenges, Reagan's impact on domestic policy left a lasting legacy. His belief in free market solutions and limited government became influential tenets of modern conservatism, reshaping the political landscape and guiding future policy direction. Throughout his presidency, Reagan remained a masterful communicator, using the power of rhetoric to galvanize public support and articulate his vision for America. His speeches, imbued with optimism and a sense of mission, resonated with millions, providing a source of inspiration and unity during a period of significant transformation and uncertainty.
Chapter 8: Legacy and Reflection. Ronald Reagan's presidency came to an end on January 20, 1989, but his impact on American politics and society continued to resonate long after his departure from public office. As he left the White House, Reagan's legacy was cemented as both a transformational and polarizing figure, embodying the complexity of contemporary American conservatism.
Reagan's vision of an America rooted in the principles of individual liberty, free market economics, and strong national defense fostered a profound shift in the nation's political discourse. His presidency marked the ascendancy of modern conservative ideology, with his policies fundamentally reshaping economic priorities, social attitudes, and international relations. Reagan's emphasis on American exceptionalism and optimism resonated deeply with the public, shaping a narrative of national renewal and strength. His ability to communicate effectively, a skill honed during years in Hollywood and public service, endowed him with a unique capacity to shape public opinion and inspire confidence.
Despite his achievements, Reagan's legacy remains the subject of ongoing scholarly examination and public debate. Supporters celebrate him as a champion of freedom, whose presidency ended the Cold War and revitalized the American economy. Critics, however, highlight the social inequalities and fiscal challenges that emerged from his policies, raising questions about the long-term implications of his economic and social reforms.
In retirement, Reagan remained active in public life, engaging in speaking engagements, memoir writing, and advocacy work through the establishment of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. His commitment to public service and dedication to conservative ideals continued into his post-presidential years.
However, in 1994, Reagan publicly disclosed his diagnosis with Alzheimer's disease, a revelation that evoked widespread sympathy and admiration for his courage and grace. The diagnosis marked the beginning of a gradual withdrawal from public life, with Nancy Reagan becoming a dedicated advocate for Alzheimer's research and awareness.
Ronald Reagan passed away on June 5, 2004, at the age of 93, leaving behind a legacy defined by its complexity and enduring influence. As a president who championed a vision of American renewal, Reagan's impact is reflected in the policies, debates, and political dynamics that continue to shape the United States.
Ultimately, Ronald Reagan remains a seminal figure in American political history, a leader who transformed from a small-town Midwesterner to a global icon. His life story, marked by resilience, charisma, and unyielding optimism, serves as a testament to the power of belief and determination in shaping the course of history.